We haven't been.
You have to go really close.
Is this on?
Yeah, you have to be really close.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Kiss the mic.
We haven't been given any announcements that need to be made beforehand. Does anyone have any that? And I'm sorry that I've almost lost my voice today, so I'll be sipping water and sucking on Fisherman's Friend through the event, I think.
So, Marvin, I have some slides that are announcements that if you want to just.
Oh, do you have some?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are some announcements that'll come up on the slide here. Oh yeah, that's going to happen.
Next time.
That's it. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. And you've seen our welcome as well. And welcome to everybody on this kind of blustery day and dampish day, and I guess we're into what we call early winter around here. We've bought into a program called Finding Meaning in Liminal Times, and I had to go and look up this word, as maybe some of us did. Liminal means a change time or a hinge time or a time of transition. I read in my dictionary that it also means trivial for some reason, but I guess I think of it as more like the Chinese character that means crisis and opportunity. That it's kind of like that, and so now I'm blanking on her name. The minister from Saskatoon, Karen Fraser-Gidlitz, who's been here years ago, has put together this program where several ministers of different Unitarian congregations will present a homily for us. And today we're going to hear one from Reverend Brian Kiley. And the theme is about conversation, is about how can we communicate with one another, because conversation can be a very dangerous thing, especially when we're polarized, as so much of our world is, especially since COVID and since the Trump era in the U.S., I would say, and other things. It's like there's a huge gulf that's opened up between people. So how can we cross this kind of gulf? I mean, it may be easy enough among ourselves, although there may be times when we create barriers with communication with one another too. Anyway, that's going to be the theme that we'll be considering today. Well, I've asked Barb if she would come up and read the lighting of the chalice.
These are the words of M. Maureen Kellerman. We come together without creed. In this free church, we come together without creed, focusing instead on the core values of justice, equality, and compassion, of mutual acceptance of our diverse ways of being, as we seek to connect ourselves more fully with the unfolding truths of life and of our world. We come together in shared conviction that all people deserve a voice in matters that concern them, that it's up to each of us to protect the rights of all, particularly those who, for whatever reason, have long been held in silence. We come together in the stubborn belief that community is possible and that peace is more than a dream. We commit together to affirm in our actions as well as in our words the inherent worth inherent worth and dignity of every human being. We come together in awareness of our interdependence with all humanity and with the wider web of existence. For that too is part of what is meant by we. In this free church, we come together without creed, believing that the way we live in the world bears testament to the value of our beliefs. We light this chalice as a beacon of hope for who have gathered here this day, for all who have ever walked through our doors, and for those who may yet find this spiritual home, and for those whose paths will never come our way. For all this, and for all those things we dare to hope and dream, we kindle our chalice flame this day.
Thanks, Barb. I'm really pleased that she made reference to some of our statements in our 8 principles, and I think particularly about the first one about the inherent worth and dignity of everyone, because that surely is one of the keys to communication, and also one of the, in my own experience anyway, one of the most difficult to practice uniformly. Now, we're going to sing out of both the books today, and so the first one is number 1012 in the Teal book, and to my knowledge, to my memory, we've never sung this before, so it'll be new to us. So, but it will be up on the screen. I just want to point out, if you open up to 1012, when you get down to near the bottom of the second page, and you come to the, will you share some of your stories with me? Just note that we hold that for 3 beats, and then there's an interlude of a full bar where we don't sing. So there'd be a temptation to sing too early in there. So just watch out for that break.
Frightened, will you reassure me when
Thanks for giving that a try. Our little choir isn't with us today. Tara's got illness in her house, and so we just, the three of us just had a look at it just beforehand, but, so we struggled with it, but the words are there, and they have meaning. As I mentioned, we're doing this four-part program of finding meaning in liminal times. And the time between the old and the new, the time of transition, and the things that are new can be what we might determine as good or bad, at least that bring us pleasure and calm, or bring us difficulty and pain. And what can we draw from our tradition, from our statement of principles, and so on, to be there in these times in a constructive way? So that's the principle that we're going to hear from Reverend Brian Cotty about. We're going to do a litany of atonement, and I've asked Mark to read it for us. And I want to point out that after each piece that he reads, we will be singing. And we've done this before, those of us who have been around for a while. After each of the lines that Mark reads, we will sing, "We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love." Let's try it together just once. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. So after each line that he reads, we'll do that response. And you need the first page here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's start. Ready?
okay. Okay.
Okay.
Get up close to the mic.
Right. So this litany is written by Robert Eller Isaacs. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time when we have struck out in anger without just cause.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing sight of our unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For those and for so many other acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. on the YouTube, was it?
It's okay.
Sorry, we've
That's
already
good.
done it.
That's nice. Okay.
Thank you. This is the time when we are invited to share our joys and concerns, the things that have meaning in our lives. And if you choose to share something, please come up and take the microphone on the table and introduce yourself and briefly what is your concern or your the fairly well-known writer Marge Piercy has written a little piece called Counsels. We must sit down and reason together. Perhaps we should sit in the dark. In the dark, we could utter our feelings. In the dark, we could propose and describe and suggest. In the dark, we could not see who speaks, and only the words would say what they say. No one would speak more than twice. No one would speak less than once, thus saying what we feel and what we want, what we fear for ourselves and each other into the dark. Perhaps we could begin to listen. The women must learn to dare to speak. The men must learn to bother to listen. The women must learn to say, I think this is so. The men must learn to stop dancing solos on the ceiling. After each speaks, she or he will say a ritual phrase. It is not I who speaks, but the wind. Wind blows through me. Long after me is the wind. Now we're going to sing another song from the Teal book. It's 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. This little song was written by a woman in the Lower Mainland named Joyce Poley, who's contributed a great deal to our Unitarian community, not only in Canada, but across North America. And this is one of her songs. And it again is... you have to get the way this works is, see, it starts out on the first place, when our heart is in the holy place, and then it goes to the second system on the third page, and then you see there's a bar line there with 2 dots, and that means there's a repeat. And then after that, when it starts and then it goes back to the first page, when our heart is in a holy place, and we sing that again, and then we sing the second stanza, and then we come to the bar line again on the second system on the third page, where there's another repeat, and we go back to when our heart is in a holy place, and sing the next stanza, and so on. That's the way it goes. And in the end, when we come to the end, we sing when the heart is in a holy place, and then there's the coda at the back of the last of the third page, where we repeat when the heart is in the holy place. If you just remember to flip back and forth whenever you come to that double bar line. Okay, play it. Right?
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes. heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place. When we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
I'm really happy that they had that slide of the people in the forest, because my Nina would regard that as the holiest place she could think of. So now we're going to hear from Reverend Barton Kiley on this theme of can we talk about our communication.
Good morning. My name is Brian Kiley, and I minister with Kelowna Unitarians. As a Unitarian for over 40 years, and a minister for 35 of those, I've always had an image that we are on the outside of the religious and social mainstream. In fact, as I look back at our record of standing up for the rights of LGBTQ2S people, for women's reproductive rights, for refugees, for climate justice, for truth and reconciliation, for the homeless, for multi-faith conversations, and other issues, I have sometimes imagined that we are on the...
I'm just gonna, technical difficulties here, is that the sharing doesn't won't allow me to move the live video into the, into that screen.
Oh,
So weird.
Well, audio's okay. Is he good looking?
You can hear it, but you can't see it. Because I'm using like, that's really weird.
We don't
I
mind.
can't,
We can just.
it's like the slideshow is still hogging it. I think that's what it is, the slideshow is still hogging it. Yeah, you just listen, I guess? We'll figure out that later.
progressive edge of social change. After all, we have a great set of principles, including our seventh, regarding the respect for the interdependent web. Do you know that that was the first mainline religious statement that spoke to humans being fully a part of nature and not rulers over it? That was pretty advanced for 1986.
Our principles speak about justice and equity and compassion, about essential fairness, about combating racism. It's still a pretty good list all these years later. And these principles were voted in a democratic fashion back when I was brand new in the church. And they encouraged me into and have guided me through my ministry. What I've always admired about the principles and sources is that they are respectful. The statement is not a creed that must be believed. Rather, it tries to lay out who we are as Unitarian Universalists, or perhaps more realistically, who we aspire to be. They offer no promises. They don't attack anyone else. They don't disrespect the beliefs of others. There's no taunting, no hatred, no arrogance, I hope, and no insult. We don't claim to have the truth or all the answers, either sacred or secular. In our sources, we explicitly state our respect for the wisdom of other religious views and faiths, even as we state strong support for humanism and the scientific method. There is, in the tone and the wording, a certain civility in our principles, an invitation for thoughtful reflection and for conversation. They are tools designed to help us formulate and refine our personal beliefs and values. Again, not a creed, but a set of guidelines to help us articulate our personal moral codes. What the statement is not is a big stick designed to beat us or anybody else. Now, because we have no stake in being the one true faith, we don't need to go to war with any other religion. Instead, what we ideally seek is an exchange of ideas to the end of expanding our knowledge, our spirituality, maybe finding common ground, maybe refining our own views and rethinking our positions. Now, I suspect that everyone who has taken the time to consider the principles has one that speaks to them a little bit more than the others. And the one that's guided me most consistently is the first: respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And given my preamble about the principles in general, this might not be a surprise. Now, I am not perfect at this respect thing. I am known to colorfully curse bad drivers through the privacy of my car. Oh, yes. And I confess to having some hard thoughts about this current Alberta Premier, but for the most part, I try to remember that essential respect. I try to train myself to follow it in little ways. I am friendly to grocery store clerks, even when I'm having a bad day, and especially when they're having a bad day. When I'm dealing with a call center, I try to remember that whatever is irritating me is not the frontline person's fault. And when necessary to ask for the supervisor, I do it as politely as I can. It pains me to see signs near the cash of our local grocery store reminding customers that abuse of the staff will not be tolerated and they will not be served. Has society sunk so low that we have to be reminded to not abuse minimum wage cashiers? I am no saint, and I often fail. But I strive to be respectful of the inherent worth and dignity of others. In short, and that's one reason, the principles speak to that core of civility, which is why I'm speaking on this topic today. So far, the 21st century seems to be defined by the death of civility, especially in the public forum. Philosophy professor Mark Kingwell speaks of the duty of civility. Civility means a great deal more than being nice to one another, he writes. It is the lubricant that keeps society running smoothly. So vital is it, in fact, that some philosophers say we have a duty to act civilly, especially here in Canada, where we must live with diversity. And he goes on to suggest that dictionaries often give civility short shrift, dismissing it as a thin veneer on civilization, one of the most disingenuous of the social graces. Now, to a certain extent, the dictionaries have it right. Civility is the hallmark of diplomacy, after all, which sometimes means polite speech between bitter enemies. But at least civil speech lessens the chance of escalating the problem. Now, later in his article, which we will consider in our deeper dive in 2 weeks, he starts to define what he sees as a key aspect of civility. Quote, "First and foremost, it is the one in which the mass of people subdue their selfish instincts in favor of common well-being." Subdue their selfish instincts in favor of the common well-being. I'm starting to believe that if that aspect of civility exists in Canadian society, it is rapidly waning, eroding, lost in a mass of personal interest, self-centeredness, and entitlement. I live in Edmonton. I am a cyclist. Now, Edmonton is a geographically spread out city where the car, or more rightly in Alberta, the pickup truck rules. When the city started to create downtown bike lanes 6 or 7 years ago, the hue and cry was deafening. Excuse me. How dare anyone waste my tax money and challenge the supremacy of my God-given right to drive anywhere I want? This week I've heard a talk radio discussion about $10 a day daycare, which is not yet available in Alberta. And inevitably, there were a few texts that came into the radio station with a message something like this: "I don't have kids. Why should I pay for other people's kids?" Have we lost the sense of the common good so completely? What concerns me is the narrowness of the vision who people think that way. Government should exist to meet my needs and everybody else can go, okay. They don't see that we are all in this together, and that ignoring the real needs of one group may lead to our needs being ignored as well down the road. The democratic process is, or should be, about more than the one with the most votes winning. Democracy also has to be just and equitable and compassionate. And oh my, did I just reference our second principle? Yes, I did. And our seventh principle speaks to the interconnectedness of all things. Can we not see the basic interconnectedness of human needs as well? As a society, the idea of being part of a society is evaporating right before our eyes, and I find that depressing. Sure, we have a ton of real issues facing us and limited resources with which to address them. And we have many good and valuable, if sometimes differing, interests and approaches to the betterment of our world. But increasingly, the voice of how will this affect me has become dominant. Once upon a time, most Canadians at least considered the we alongside the me. Not a homogeneous sense by any means, but often people thought of the collective, the common good. And it seems to me that more and more now think only in terms of the me. The ideas are fueled by the ability to find internet and media echo chambers where you only hear your ideas espoused and never hear any other viewpoint unless they're expressed in a demeaning and dismissive tone. And people who speak civilly, rationally, and quietly about the we are definitely them. Dismissed, denigrate, and often shouted down or spoken over. working together with people whose views are different from ours is passé. Increasingly, the concept of compromise is passé. Actually making personal sacrifice for the common good is sadly often also passé. This is a familiar discussion around our house, and it usually winds up with my wife or I making the half-joking statement of, if Canadians in the 1940s all felt that way, we'd all be speaking German today. Hyperbole and oversimplification, of course, but with a degree of possibility. And the thing is, these opponents on any side of any question are mostly not bad people. Look at the fires across Canada this summer. Acts of kindness and generosity abounded, and no one was stopping to check political views before helping. But absent catastrophe, we are becoming increasingly polarized. Just talking civilly without anger or yelling or name-calling, just exploring both shared and differing views. The search for the common ground is getting hard to find, much less finding the common ground itself. Maybe what we need most is what Marge Piercy said in our reading. We must sit down and reason together. Perhaps we should sit in the dark. In the dark, we could utter our feelings. In the dark, we could propose and describe and suggest. In the dark, we would not see who speaks, and only the words would say what they say. No one would speak more than twice. And of course, the default mode she refers to is listening to what's actually being said. I don't know, friends. I'm 68. Maybe my ideas are old and out of date. Certainly, my children like to ask me what it was like when dinosaurs walked the earth. Maybe this is the dawning of the war of the words. Political leaders around the world, and especially in the United States, seem to want things their way only. And we don't have to look any farther than the congressional speaker debacle or the Trump trials to see that the idea of the common good has well and truly disappeared from the American political scene. And sadly, that twisted pattern is gaining traction in this country as well. It breaks my heart. I am old enough to remember a parliament marked by fierce debate, yes, but a parliament with a basic civility and a recognition that good policy has no political party. I remember a US Congress where a bit of horse trading, compromises on bills where both sides got some of what they wanted. That's long gone. Can we not just talk? Perhaps we have to look back some wisdom coming from those $10 a day daycare classrooms. For there they teach the basic skills of civil communication, according to Judy Chambers of Penn State University. Every voice deserves to be heard. Every voice will be respected. We will take turns. We will not interrupt or speak over others. And adapting some extra bits from the adult world, she adds, we will refrain from shouting or cursing. We will only discuss the past when we agree it is relevant to our discussion. And we will talk about issues, not personalities. It's funny, I guess, me wanting to return to a time of politics dimly remembered and maybe partly invented. I want to go back to ways of the past more than this present-day succession of endless tirades. My goodness, I think that technically makes this liberal Unitarian minister a conservative, because conservatives tend to want to go back to the ways of the past. Yoicks! Maybe I've got to turn in my union card. But I do believe, in my heart of hearts, that finding ways to just talk to each other and to really listen to each other over time will lead us to better outcomes, better cooperation, and a gentler and healthier society for all. So let us think about how to set aside our bulwark differences for a time and just learn to talk and listen civilly. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian Kiley. It's really unfortunate that we weren't able to see the look on his face and his body language that went with it. I think we should explore whether there's some way we can send out a link that people might be able to find it on their own computers at home.
And we can host it on our website too.
Oh, we can do that?
Mhm.
Well, that would be the simplest way, would it? Okay, that's what we'll do then. So I think maybe I'll ask Lorna to send out a notice about that. She'd be willing to do that. At any rate, I was thinking about some of the people and the groups of people that are difficult for me to find good communication with. And most of you know that I began my first career as a Lutheran pastor. And so it's really difficult for me sometimes to communicate with conservative Christians who seem to me to be living in a little box like this and don't see anything outside of this box. And since I'm no longer in that box, it seems like the box is made of concrete. And having been raised as a working class person, it's still difficult for me to communicate wholeheartedly with the older class, for example. And I was remembering just a few days ago doing business with one of the local businesses, the proprietor of which I know really well and like. And she happened to mention in passing that she had been reading Conrad Black, and did I like Conrad Black? I just sort of felt myself wince inside, and I thought, well, now we've reached an abyss here. We can't talk about this. So I invite you to take the next 2 minutes to reflect inside and close your eyes if that's comfortable for you, and to think particularly about who are the persons or the kinds of people that are difficult for you to get across this barrier of communication. And I'll ring the chime at the end of the time. now is the time when we share our resources with one another. Many of us support this fellowship through checkoffs at our bank or credit union or in other ways. And the non-designated offerings that are given or go toward the caravan who deal with people out on the streets. Before you pass the plates, I just want to mention that I neglected to put any envelopes in the basket. So if you wish to leave an offering that you want to have credited for a tax receipt, Liz is going to find some, I think. Thank you. If you wanted a tax receipt and so on, you could indicate your name and contact information. And as I was mentioning, Caravan will receive our non-designated offerings, and they are out in the streets dealing with the cares and concerns of people who live their lives out there and carry their burdens out there. So thank you for sharing your resources.
There's also an option to volunteer. We need more tech help.
Well, hey, you've done yeoman service, Greg, so I want to say thank you very much for filling in. Our usual tech person, Heather, has COVID, so she's ill at home. We have one more song. It's number 6 in the Gray book, Just As Long As I Have Breath. And now this one is much more typical hymn tune, so probably a little easier for us to sing, but maybe a little more somber too. But anyway, let's give it a try.
Do we have that on there?
What number was it, Mark? 6.
We have that one, do
Do we not have it there?
we? What's it called?
Just as long as I have breath.
Okay.
If we don't have it, we'll just do it on our own.
No, I think I have to kill the slideshow though. Okay, then I can go to.
I remember when we thought using computers and services was a good idea. And it's not about you.
There.
Yay.
There we go.
Here we go.
Just as long as I have breath,
extinguish the chalice, I will say carry the flame, and we'll form a big circle to sing ourselves out.
Not you want this slide.
Are you going around?
In front of you.
Can you stretch back out there, Mark?
There you go, lyrics.
Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. And we shall see a world of light and a world of joy. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.
One was a couple, so it's more physical.
Thanks, Greg.
I figured it out. What was going on? It wasn't.
Everyone, thanks, Greg.
Yeah?
Thank you, Marva. That was super well done.
Is that someone on Zoom?
Is there an order of service?
Thank you.
Oh, hi. Hi, Zoomer. So yeah, we can hear your voice really well.
Awesome. Thanks for stepping in so that I could see this from home.
I'm gonna stop the